Hello, friends, and welcome into this very special edition. It is the 30th episode of Talking Sports at Work. I am your host, Eric Kersley. Today is Thursday, April the 4th, and it's the 30th episode of the podcast itself. That's not including all the YouTube stuff and bonus content and everything else, but just full episodes of the podcast. This is our 30th episode, so congratulations to me for doing that. Excuse me, and I'm just going to start off by saying I am a slight bit frazzled this morning. Had a weird experience this morning. I got everything loaded up in my vehicle. I got on the road, and it's a very light day for me, so it's going to be not a busy day. So I actually ran to the house real quick to refill my coffee and use the bathroom. And on my way out, I decided to check really quickly in the shed because, anyway, this may be too much backstory than you guys need, but I had to check for something in the shed real quick before I left. And I go and I look in this box that is for my kids' summer clothes that they can't fit in yet. And I start to open the box, and this white furry face pops up at me. And I was like, what the hell? And I dropped the box, and I didn't know what to think because there have been rats in there before. And so, but this was too big to be a rat, and so, but that was my first initial thought, and then I was like, wait, no, that was a cat. There was a cat in this box, and it was actually a really pretty white cat. And I'm gonna have to pause this. I'm gonna have to interrupt this story. I'm sorry. I know I just got started, but I gotta run in the store here real quick, and I gotta get some energy drink. I will be right back. I'm gonna keep you guys in suspense, and then I'll finish the story from this morning. All right, hey friends, sorry about that. So, this was the last chance I was gonna have to stop and get a Red Bull for a few miles, so I wanted to go ahead and stop there. Sorry about the interruption. So anyway, I go in the shed. I start to open this box. This white face pops up at me, and I drop the box. And so then it hits me. That was a cat, and so I realized I'm gonna have to turn the box over so she can get out. And so I turn the box over and kind of open it up a little further so she can get out. She pops out and runs out the door. And then I look down, and guess what else is there? There are these 3 little tiny baby kittens in this box. And I am still honestly kind of reeling from that and not really sure what I'm gonna do. But at first I was like, well, what am I gonna do now? If I close the shed back, will she be able to get back in here, or do I need to leave the box outside? And I actually called my ex-wife because she lives not that far by, and I thought maybe she would want to come by and deal with them. She loves cats, but she was about to go to work, and so I wanted to pet them, but you're not supposed to when they're that tiny. And they were probably only a couple weeks maybe old, and like their eyes were just barely open, but they were so cute. And the mother cat herself was this beautiful white, I don't know, it's not Siamese, what is that, but she was like this beautiful white and gray blend. And so these cats are probably going to turn out to be really pretty. And luckily, thank God, my kids were not there to see them, because then there's no way I would have been able to get rid of them. It's going to be hard enough for me myself to now not keep at least one kitten. But God, I don't need any more animals. I don't need any more living beings in my house. I already have a hard enough time keeping up with my kids and taking care of Itchy and cleaning up all the hair that he sheds. And he's actually a really good, calm, low-maintenance dog. And cats are always low maintenance as well, so I don't know. And it'd be good for him to have a friend to play with when he's at home alone all day. God. Anyway, it was a trip, man. So anyway, I ended up just closing the door back, but I made sure that there was an opening there that was big enough in the shed that she could get back in. And I left the box there. I didn't touch the kittens. I just took some pictures of them, and excuse me. Yeah. So that's how my what's going on my morning. But if anybody wants a kitten, let me know. I have at least 3 of them. I didn't really want to dig too far in there because I didn't want to mess with them and mess up their little nest, their little bed, and whatever. And I know you're not supposed to touch them. At least I know that's the case with birds. I think that's probably the case with kittens too. You don't want to touch them, and I don't know if they have the same thing where their mother won't come back if you touch them like birds. But I didn't want to mess with them. But there were at least 3 little cute kittens in there. So if anybody wants one, hit me up. And I am going to try my hardest to not keep one of them. And we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so that's my morning. We do have some sports stuff to talk about. This is probably going to be a rather short episode. I know I say that literally every time now, but I mean it this time. A handful of things to talk about. We'll dive into Stephon Diggs. We'll dive into what's going on with the Bills, what's going on with the Texans now. The Vols are out of the NCAA tournament. There's a lot of excitement around the women's tournament and other such stuff. So I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. Okay, friends, welcome back to Talking Sports at Work, Kitten Edition. The biggest news of the day is obviously the Stephon Diggs trade. And there's a lot to that. I mean, there are a lot of angles to this because Diggs has been essentially, I like him. I've always liked him going back to his Minnesota days. I've liked him as a player, but he is a malcontent and seems like he's always got something to bitch about, and he's kind of your old-fashioned diva receiver. And the thinking was that now it seemed like he had a good thing going there when they got Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, but he wasn't happy with that after a while. And then he had a great thing going with Josh Allen in Buffalo for their first couple of years. Josh Allen's now one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Stephon Diggs, his first year led the league in pretty much every receiving category, and now he's one of the best receivers in the league. And they had a really good thing going, but then that seemed to deteriorate. And now he's back to basically being the same guy he was at the end of his term in Minnesota. And now here he is, 30 years old, with a giant cap hit, and they trade him. Now, there are a lot of ways to look at this because from Buffalo's standpoint, it sucks. I mean, it just sucks. They did not get much for him. They basically got the value of maybe like a late second, early third round pick, essentially a third round pick, because they gave Stephon Diggs and a 5 and a 6. I think the 5 was this year and the 6 next year or something, some different. And then what they got was a second round pick next year. And not this draft, but next year's draft. So really, they didn't get much for him at all. But I think the thinking was this is essentially kind of an addition by subtraction thing. He's become toxic, and let's get him out of here. In terms of personnel on the football field and as a player, that's a huge loss, especially considering that Gabe Davis is also gone. Their receiver room does not look very good, but we know now that's going to definitely have to be their top priority in the draft. Unfortunately for them, they're not picking until the late 20s. And by that point, most of the top receivers are going to be off the board. So yeah, they're going to be in a tough spot. Plus, the best free agent receivers are already gone. I'm not sure what their receiver room is going to look like. I think they added Curtis Samuel, who's not a number 1 receiver. They've got some good tight ends, obviously, and maybe they're hoping that Josh Allen can be, one of these quarterbacks that's good enough to raise the level of play and be able to play and be successful without having elite receivers. We'll see, because I don't know how they could possibly get a true number 1 receiver at this point. But it sounded like they needed to get him out of the building. Now, here's the other perspective. Right now, from the Texans side, it looks like a great thing. right? I mean, they've now got one of the better receiver rooms in the league with Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Also with Dalton Schultz, they added Joe Mixon. I mean, the Texans, you have to love what they are doing. I personally hate it because they're in our division, but if you're a Texans fan, you've got to be as excited as you have been in a long, long time right now. And all the talk that I'm hearing on sports radio and stuff right now is a lot of people are now putting them in that top echelon of real Super Bowl contenders in the AFC now. And I get it. It makes sense. I personally don't think they are there quite yet. I think with so many additions, we still are not sure how well it's all going to gel. They're also adding a lot of guys who are older and who have had some injury history with Diggs, with Hunter, with Mixon. So some of their bigger additions are all guys that are getting up there in age, and but I love the fact that they are trying to go all in, but I just feel like it they're not going to be there just yet. I'm not saying that they were a flash in the pan last year because CJ Stroud is definitely for real. And the way those receivers broke out was incredible. The offensive line is already decent. And they, I think, improved it in free agency as well. And they've still got draft picks to work with. Their defense is decent. So, I mean, they're going to be good. They're going to come in as the clear favorite in our division, but I don't think they're going to be on the late level with the Ravens and the Chiefs just yet. I think those are still going to be the two. Now, does this put them ahead of like Buffalo and Cincinnati? Maybe. I mean, it might. We forget about Cincinnati because Joe Burrow was hurt, but when he's healthy, they are still a legit contender in the AFC. But I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe it's me hoping that, they're not going to just totally surpass us and dominate our division. But I just kind of feel like let's see how all this works out before we start to crown them as a true contender. Everything on paper that they have done looks excellent, but the games aren't played on paper. Let's just see first. But again, I'm not criticizing any of the moves they've made. I think they've made excellent moves. I think they've gone about this in the absolute great way. And let's not forget that Nick Caserio they were trying to run him out of town just as recently as like a year and a half ago. And now everybody's wanting to praise him as already the executive of the year for this season. And it's crazy. And that brings me to another point that I'll get to later. It's a lie detector test thing. I'm going to get to that later, actually, though. But Nick Caserio has been outstanding. He obviously got the right coach, and they're clearly going all in on this, quarterback on a rookie contract window that they have. I don't think they're going to be a true Super Bowl contender next year, but if they can continue to build and put things together, I think by the year after that, they will be. But everything they've done has been great on paper. Now, here's the downside to it. And this is the thing that I've heard, and this is going directly to the Stephon Diggs trade. The question about this that I heard talked about on the radio, and I heard it asked a couple times, was, is this going to be a problem? Is he going to be a locker room problem? Is he going to bring down the culture there and be sort of toxic? And, because as of right now, it is the clear leadership is D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud. They run things. There is no question, and they have a great culture led by those two guys. So is a guy who's sort of a malcontent going to possibly come in and screw that up? Now, the opinions by the experts that I listen to on the radio say no, that it's not going to be a factor. I'm not going to be so quick to say that. I think it could be a factor. I mean, look at what he's done everywhere he's been. He has caused problems. And he's now 30 years old. How much does he even have left? You could say that the pattern has been he'll have a good couple of years and then he gets unhappy and starts screwing everything up and they run him out of town, trade him for not much. Happened in Minnesota. Then he goes to Buffalo, has a great couple of years, gets unhappy, starts screwing everything up. They trade him for not much. Now, I don't even know if he's still got those good couple of years left in him at his age. So I don't know that they're going to just be this rookie quarterback and rookie head coach just last year. The second year coach and quarterback are going to be strong enough presences and leaders and established enough. I don't know that they're proven enough to definitely be able to overrule a toxic personality in the locker room. So that's the one thing that I would say might be problematic about this Diggs trade. Do I think that he's going to be a problem? I don't know. I really don't know. But I do know that he's, you know, at the tail end of his career, or definitely towards or at the end of his prime. But I love the moves that they're making, adding these veteran guys to go along with the young talent they already have and spending all the cap space that they can in order to try and win now while they have this great elite quarterback on a rookie contract. It is absolutely on paper the perfect way to go about things. For me, I honestly think they might have been better off trying to go for a Brandon Ayuk or a Tyler Boyd, but from what I've heard, the price tag on those guys would have been much higher, and they were able to get Stephon Diggs for really not much at all. It's a second round pick in next year's draft that they acquired from Minnesota for, I think, trading back at one point. So they really got him for not much. And if they were going to go get Ayuk, it definitely would have cost them more. But anyway, we'll see how it turns out. The Texans definitely are putting things together. If we were playing Madden, I bet their Madden rating as a team is going to be way the F up. But let's not forget that this is a team that just the year before last had the worst roster in football. So I don't know that, and everything they've done to rebuild has been impressive, but they overperformed last year. They looked better than they actually were last year because of an elite quarterback and a really good, fresh, new coach. They're still not talent-wise on that level of Baltimore or Kansas City or Cincinnati, and maybe even Buffalo. It takes more than just one season to build. Now, if you have a superstar young quarterback, then that's really everything. That's a huge, huge, huge bonus, and it allows you to do everything else much more freely, and so they're in a great position. But if they're really able to go from seriously one of the worst rosters that I can remember 2-3 years ago to a Super Bowl contender in 2 or 3 years, that's going to be one of the most impressive turnarounds in the history of football. So, yes, they're still going to be a really good team. They're a playoff team. They're probably going to be the best team in our division. I just don't know that I put them on that level. Unless C.J. Stroud himself takes another big step forward and puts himself now as not only a star franchise quarterback, but an MVP caliber guy. If he takes another step forward and becomes that, then yeah, they can win the Super Bowl next year. I don't know that that's going to happen. I like Stroud. I hope he continues to get better, but I could just as easily see a sort of sophomore slump, or not even that, but just a sort of leveling off, or like not even regression, but just sort of I think expectations should be tempered for what the Texans are going to be. On paper, everything they've done is great. I just get the feeling that we should be cautious with this. This is a team that's still in the later stages of a rebuild, but is still in that rebuild mode. So they're finishing it up now. They're in the final stages of the rebuild. But this was a terrible, terrible team 2 years ago. And I don't think you go from that to Super Bowl contender in 2 years, or Super Bowl champion. You can go from that to playoff team clearly in 1 year, but they overachieved last year. I think everybody knows that because of a superstar young rookie quarterback. Now, they're not going to be sneaking up on anybody. They've added a lot of talent. They, on paper, should be better. We'll see. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on the Texans. Now, on the Bills, man, I talked about them a little bit already. I don't know what they're going to do. But it seems to me like their priority was to get him the hell out of there. That he had become too much of a problem and too toxic that they were willing to eat a massive, like $30 million dead cap hit and not get much back in return just to get him out of there. And especially considering the fact that they didn't have much behind him on the depth chart at that position, and they were still willing to do that, really must say how toxic he had become there. So they're going to have to prioritize finding somebody for other than the tight ends for Josh Allen to throw to. But I am a believer in Josh Allen. Yeah. Anyway, I think they will, if they're able to play the draft properly, and Josh Allen is able to be that guy to elevate everybody around him, then the Bills should still be one of the better teams in the AFC. We'll see. But man, this was a huge trade that had a lot of angles, a lot of things to talk about, had a lot of ripple effects. And yeah, we're going to see how things go for both of these franchises as well as the other teams that this affects as well. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. All right. Hey, friends, back again. So I mentioned the lie detector thing in the last segment, and that was kind of a non sequitur, but here's what I was talking about. On the radio this morning, I only caught the tail end of it. I wish I'd had time to listen more of it, but on Mad Dog Radio, for some reason, they had Mike Babchick hooked up to a lie detector, from what I understand, an actual polygraph test on the air so they could ask him questions. And they were essentially trying to find out, I think, if he cheated in his NCAA tournament bracket that he had going with a pool with some other guys. But it was a really fun little thing that they did. And it got me to thinking, I want to see that more. I want to see more of these sports media personalities be put on polygraph tests and ask questions. Because it was funny because earlier, just in the morning on a different channel, I heard Mike Florio talking about, what was he talking about? Something that he had said a year or two ago that he had turned out to be right about, and everybody at the time had said he was crazy, and now he turned out to be right about it, and he was talking about how, but they never will admit that when they were wrong, and that even though they called you crazy back then, they'll never come back and say that, yeah, you were right, and admit that they were wrong. And I was thinking the whole time, you don't do that either. None of these sports media people do that. Why would you expect like fans and social media and other experts to do that when you don't do it either? You're not going to come on here and talk about the ways that you were wrong. None of you guys, I mean, you almost never hear these sports media people admit to being wrong about a guy or a team or something they said. I mean, one of the best examples is recent quarterback drafts. You go back and you look at Justin Herbert. To hear it now and a year or two after the fact, everybody loved Justin Herbert. Everybody knew he was going to be great. They all loved him going into that draft, right? Hell no, they didn't. They were bashing the living hell out of him. I specifically remember it because I remember that draft. I really liked Justin Herbert. And I said in an average draft class, he would be a number one overall pick. But the problem is there just happens to be two guys who are like clear no-brainer number one overall picks ahead of him this year, in addition to him. And that was Joe Burrow and Tua. But I said, in most draft classes, Justin Herbert would be the number one overall pick. And the thing that I remember specifically about it that made me like him even more is at some point during an interview or during his evaluations, he admitted to being a little bit of an introvert. And everybody lost their fucking minds about that. It was like he had said he was a Scientologist, or like like the earth was flat, or something just ridiculous. Him saying he was a little bit of an introvert, everybody lost their minds. How can he lead an NFL team? How can he lead a huddle? How can he be a quarterback, be the face of a franchise if he's an introvert? He can't be. And everybody just started bashing the living hell out of him after that point. It was insane. And I remember it because I remember thinking some of this stuff is just like unnecessarily over the line attacking this poor kid, all because he said he's a little bit of an introvert. And it sticks out to me specifically, I think, because I am admittedly an introvert myself. And that just made me love him even more. I already liked him as a prospect, and that really made me get on his side even further because I mean, 90% of the sports media people, then the draft experts just started tearing him down just in completely unfair ways after that. But now, if you listen to them, none of them actually said that. They all love Justin Herbert, right? They all knew he was going to be rookie of the year. They all knew he was going to be great. None of them actually said any of those things that they said, right? And that stuff like that just drives me. Another great example in a similar situation was the Mitchell Trubisky draft, where the consensus in that draft was that Mitchell Trubisky was the best quarterback in that draft. That was according to Kuiper. That was according to, I assume, McShay. Most of those experts had him as the number one quarterback, ahead of a guy that I'd never really seen play out of Texas Tech named Patrick Mahomes, ahead of the guy I thought was the number one quarterback in that draft named Deshaun Watson. All of them, the majority of them, had Mitchell Trubisky as the number one quarterback. And now, but then a couple of years after that, nah, none of them said that. They all knew that the Bears were insane for drafting him second overall. And it's like, man, y'all are the ones who said this. You can't now backtrack. You know this stuff has been recorded, right? There's actual evidence of you saying it. But you never hear them admit to these mistakes. And I would like to see this kind of thing more, where these sports media personalities are connected to lie detectors and then ask questions about things that they may have said or opinions that they may have had in the past just to prove some of their bullshit. Like, and I get it. I mean, the entirety of this profession, not that I'm putting myself on that level, I'm saying their profession is basically guessing. It's educated guessing, especially when it comes to draft scouting and stuff like that. We're all just taking our, or they're all just taking our best guess. We as fans, we as me as a minor, sports person, but an educated sports fan, I'm just making guesses. The experts are all just making educated guesses. So they're going to get a lot of this stuff wrong. I get it. And they're required to make these guesses and put this stuff out there. And so they're not going to be right all the time. But it's still frustrating to me the way they don't own up to it when they are wrong. Yet they expect that from others. Like, they will bash people on social media who, and want them to now, anyway, it's just, it's silly to me. And I really liked that, even though it wasn't done in that context, it was just done in sort of a fun, silly context, putting Babchick on a lie detector. I would like to see that more. Like, even if you are just doing silly stuff like that with it, I thought that was a really fun idea and a really fun segment. And I wish I would have had more time to listen to it, but I had to get into work by that point. So anyway, that was what that was all about. I'm going to take another really quick break, and then I'll probably finish up today's episode with some basketball stuff. All right, hey friends, back again. So I want to take a minute to pat myself on the back, not just for this whole 30th episode thing, but I had a very productive day yesterday, and I have finally gotten back to working on my novel that I was super duper excited about. I was more excited about it than anything I've ever written for a few months there when I was working on it. And then the same thing that always happens with me happened, and I kind of got away from it and lost interest in it. And that's why I've never been able to finish a novel or complete, and why I worry about my own abilities as a writer to do this professionally. But I actually, over the last few days, have gotten back to it and have really made some progress on it. I've made some changes. I've gotten almost the first chapter complete. I've gotten over 5,000 words written, and that's not including all the notes and outlines and summaries and stuff that I have, but just the book itself, I'm really making some progress on, and I'm happy about that. I also got my schoolwork done for the week yesterday, and went to the dentist, and it was a very, very productive day. But excuse me, I think I'm also just kind of coming to terms with the fact that I'm probably not going to get as much writing done unless I'm able to finally make a profession out of it where I can just dedicate, 8 to 10 hours a day to that and make money off of it. Until that happens, I'm probably not going to be able to get much writing done from excuse me, late August, early September to February. And you guys know what that period is. It's football season. But when football season ends, that's when I'll start watching basketball some, but then I really start to get into my other interests and side gigs and whatever, and that usually includes writing. And so that's still my main what I want to do. And I'll lose confidence in myself about it a lot and wonder, is this really something that I want to do? Because I have to force myself to do it a lot. And I think, well, if I have to force myself to do it, is this really what I want to do for a living? But then at the same time, I realize, well, I'm just having to scrounge up for the scraps of spare time that I have to force myself to do it. If I actually am able to get to the point where I can do it for a living, then that would be different. Then I wouldn't be spending 8 to 10 hours of my day at a day job, or, and then at other time at school, and I would actually have time to dedicate to it. And it wouldn't be, me just finding these bare scraps of time and then forcing myself to get writing. So anyway, I'm really excited about it again, and I think it's headed in the right direction. I'm getting back into just sort of that mode where I'm listening to fantasy novels while I'm working, when I'm not doing the podcast and stuff. So getting myself back in that mode, and I'm really excited about that. I'm still going to continue to do the podcast. We're still going to continue to do the YouTube channel with sports stuff and a combination of playing video games and doing karaoke and whatever else nonsense we're going to do. But yeah. And anyway, so that was just a quick little side note. Other thing I wanted to say is I haven't talked since the Vols were eliminated by Purdue, and that really sucked to see. Um, because it felt like this was our shot. This year was our chance. We finally had that one element that had been missing from Tennessee's teams throughout Rick Barnes's era as the Tennessee coach. We've had these tough defensive teams, these great experienced teams, smart teams, tough-minded, hard defense, but we've been lacking an elite scorer, a guy who, especially on the wing, we've continued to try to recruit these top guys who would seem like they would be that, but they never developed into that. And then we finally got one. And not only is he that, but he's maybe the best in the country at that. He is the best pure scorer, the best wing scorer in the country. And we've got that elite, great, experienced, hard-nosed defensive team around him. It just felt like this is our year. And unfortunately, we came up short, and it had to be against friggin' Purdue again. I hate Purdue, man. But you know what? It sucked, and it happened because Dalton Knecht, God knows he did his part. I think he had 30. He was doing what he could, but no one else was scoring. Ziegler wasn't scoring. Vescovi's I don't know what happened to him this year, but that's a whole other topic. I still don't know what kind of yips he got in his head, but he just could not score all year. The one guy, Adu, was useless. He couldn't defend Edey. He couldn't make the little mid-range shots that he usually makes. And it was just nobody could. The only guy who was scoring was Triple J. He hit 3 threes in the first half, and then for some reason we quit giving him opportunities. That should have been clearly in the second half. That should have been a priority for us. Was let's let Dalton do his thing, but let's also get Triple J some shots. The one guy who's actually making shots, but I don't know if he even took another one in the second half. Yeah, I think he might have taken one other one and missed it, but I mean, still, he was the only guy who was actually making shots outside of Dalton, and we just didn't. He didn't take enough. But we also, I mean, the biggest problem was we had absolutely no answer for Zach Edey. Adu should have been better. He was one of the biggest reasons we lost that game. Owaka should have been better, but Adu was a huge disappointment. And of course, you can't expect either of those guys to defend him one-on-one. Nobody can defend him one-on-one. But they should have done a better job. We should have done a better job game planning. We should have done a better job as a team of doubling him, and they weren't making those threes in the first half, so let them take them. Anyway, there were lots of reasons why we lost that game. But in the end, we just could not stop Zach Edey, and nobody outside of Dalton Connect could do anything offensively. Um, but either way, even though that sucks, we made it to the Elite Eight, and that's still a really good accomplishment. It's a really good year for Tennessee. That is still traditionally a football school, but has increasingly, built a really powerful men's basketball program. And also overall, great year for the Vols. Disappointing that that's as far as we made it, but still great to make it to the Elite Eight. Also, women's basketball has now become a much bigger thing, and ESPN is largely responsible for that, the way they've been pushing it and promoting it. And I did not watch that highly hyped game between Caitlin Clark, Iowa, and Angel Reese, LSU. I didn't watch it. I don't watch women's basketball unless Tennessee is good. And I wish that they had been putting all this effort into promoting women's basketball for the decades that Tennessee was dominant, but now, we're not any good anymore. And so, I hardly cared about it then. I don't know. It's not something I find as interesting. And, but I am glad that they're having more success with it and drawing more eyes. And that's always a good thing for women to get more opportunities in sports. So that's awesome. But yeah, hopefully Tennessee can get back to being, the Lady Vols of old. Even, we're never going to find another Pat Summitt, but surely, hopefully, we fired our coach again this year. We're now going to be looking for, I guess, our third one after Pat. Hopefully we can get somebody good there. And now that women's basketball is really blowing up, maybe we can get back into it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on basketball. Now here comes baseball season. I'm going to try to care about it a little bit, but I do. When the Braves are good, and they're one of the best teams in baseball, it's a lot easier for me to care about it. Plus, I really love all the changes that they've been making and finally trying to bring the sport into the 21st century and make it interesting to fans and make it move faster. I do like all the changes, but it's still just something that is at best like I just don't care that much about. But, if nothing else is going on, I will watch it. Or if it's a big game and the Braves are on, I will watch it. But I am going to focus more on my other things, which is literature and, the YouTube channel. But we're still going to talk sports. We're still going to have plenty of football stuff, plenty of basketball stuff to talk about, plenty of my personal bullshit that I know you guys love hearing about. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with the podcast. Anywho, I hope everyone has had a great week so far. I hope you have a great Thursday. I hope you have a great weekend. And I will talk to everybody again soon. Love you. Bye.